Who is my mother? To answer who is my mother, I would initially answer the great Moabitess. Genetically, my mother's name is Rhea Irvin. And, of course, she was born in Philadelphia. But initially, with my initial answer, the great Moabitess would be the mother of us all.
My biological mother was Vera Jackson. I've had many women in my life who have been mother figures to me, in that they've been teachers on one level or another. I've had my sisters. I'm the youngest one in the family, so all the older sisters were kind of like mothers to me. I've had aunts and other older relatives and friends and teachers who've all played a role in mothering me in my life. And some people weren't even related, but they've had an influence on me, you know, as far as mothering goes. They were teachers. My mother was not a religious person. The irony is that my father wanted us to be Roman Catholics, so they'd send the children to church, but neither one of them accompanied us. So they didn't teach us a whole lot about religion. They kind of relied on society to give us our religious upbringing. My own biological parents didn't teach me much of anything in terms of spirituality and religion. My mother was probably atheist. My father claimed to be a Roman Catholic, so they would send us to Catholic church. They didn't accompany us to church at all. So there wasn't any, you know, teaching as far as the biological parents were concerned.
The great Moabites having different children, breaking off into different tribes and populating different parts of the world, different parts of the earth. Beatites, Canaanites, Amorites, or whatever kind of other ites you want to point a finger at. They all came from the great Moabite mother. So I would say my mother would be the great Moabitess.
My mother is Allah. My mother is the creator of, you know, myself being in this earthly shell. So you could say she has a universal existence and a physical existence. She was in university when she was pregnant with me. So I think that has a lot to play with the whole study dynamic, you know what I mean, with regard to the issue of knowing thyself, that studying was something so natural. You know what I mean? Based on that, I think, personally. You know what I mean? Her being in that atmosphere, me being in that atmosphere, you know what I mean? We already know that the womb is the first school. So if the womb's the first school, and that's in a school, then, you know what I mean, the learning is gonna be something different, you know what I mean? A different level of learning.
My mother is the great Moabite woman. That is the political answer when asking someone that who their mother is. What that means is, what is your nationality? What is your political tie? As far as the principles of nationhood. So my mother is the Moabite woman from a political nationalistic perspective.
My mother is the one who gave me birth. She is now retired. She's a nurse by trade, but also a professional calypso singer, soca chutney singer in Caribe or Trinidad. And she's been doing that for many years. And she's still singing now, even though she's retired from nursing. I didn't grow up with my mother, so my parents split up when I was 4. And my mother went back to Caribe or Trinidad. We were located or stationed, or we lived domiciled in Montreal. And so my parents split up. My mother went back to Trinidad, and I grew up with my father. And growing up, I had very little contact with my mother. So it's only in recent years that through communication and going back to visit my mother that I learned a lot more about her, specifically last year, and her connection to me and her, if you want to say, esoteric philosophy. I wouldn't really say religious, but I'll say more spiritual philosophy then. And so she, excuse me, she studies the Hindu Devatas, as well as a little bit of the Key of Solomon, and she kind of dabbled in voodoo a little bit when I was younger, when she was around. But her philosophy is more spiritual because my opinion is she's an artist. And so religion or a fixed religion would be too confined for her.
My mother is Mocha El Bey, also known as Maida Jackson. She is Moabitess, born in what I call Canaan land, Canada.
Well, it depends on a layman. Like, my mother's Eudora McCletchy, as far as who brought me on this plane on the physical realm. But Allah, the mother of the universe. My mother, she's very spiritual, you know. She's always been, our family's always been quote-unquote religious. Right? When I came out of the church as well, growing up in Tobago, being in an Anglican church. So for the first 7 years of my life on this plane, I wasn't with her, you know. I was with my grandmother, my aunts, my uncles and stuff. While she was here trying to make ends meet, I was back in Tobago living. And when I got back with her in '84, when I was 7, that first completion, or you know, that first stage, that first cycle, that 7th cycle. So when I got back with her, and then from then it's been a journey, you know. I mean, I still with my mother. I still stay with her, live with her. I feed off her energy, so that's maybe why, part of the reason why I'm at where I'm at today, because I've always got that guidance, and she's never really directed me on that level to this, verbally or consciously or physically or anything like that, but through her DNA, right? Because you could only be what your source is, right? Or what the seed is. So seed could only be what the source is. So you know, she planted this seed, and it manifested this way. So now a lot of the things that I am about or I do now starts resonating with her, even though she never taught it to me. She did unwillingly or unknowingly, right? So, yeah. And we don't always see eye to eye. Sometimes I don't honor her the way I should. But she's the greatest being on this planet to me personally. So, all praise is due to Mom. You, they love you.
My mother's she's a thinker like me, you know, and a searcher. You know, Moors who are involved now tend to be people who search for knowledge. There are a lot of people searching for knowledge, I feel, and she grew up in the Catholic Church. You know, went to Catholic school, but around the time that I was born, she started studying Buddhism. She had looked into different religions as well, but since that time up till now, we still practice Buddhism. Buddhism is our spiritual practice. she showed me the power of being sincere in your faith. Because growing up, we didn't always have much, but whenever she wanted something or we wanted something, she always advised us to chant about it.
My mother is Mosumade, Ade Funke Onigbinde, and you know, that's my birth mother. But as far as the political answer to it would be the great Moabite mother, you know, because we're all descendant of her, you know, we're all children of her. Growing up, you know, I was raised as a Christian by her, you know, and I remember having a book. It's called My Little Book of Bible Stories, a little yellow book. So I'm very familiar with the Bible stories, and while I was incarcerated, you know, I read up on the Bible. So I'm very familiar with the Bible as far as, you know, what I was raised up on. And but for the most part, I was just with the quote-unquote religion, you know, that I was raised on. I was just taught about hell, that, you know, you go to hell. That's pretty much the bottom line. So I mean, for me, that really didn't. That was, I guess, the hook, line, and sinker of it all, you know, for that religion for me. But I don't think it made me any better of a person or worse of a person, you know?
My mother is Mary Edna Gibson Rice, South Carolina.
Lena Ruth is my mother.
Who are the individuals that are shedding light on the science? I know quite a few of them make mention of certain stuff. One person who wasn't really shy about saying things, or who didn't really bite his tongue much, was Wesley Snipes. Wesley Snipes talked about more science. He came right out and said, "This is who I am, and this is what I do." But his actions show a lot. I have a friend. I don't want to mention her name on camera. She's a songwriter, and she lives in Los Angeles. And she's written music for some of the biggest stars that we know of. And she tells me about these stories of times when they're in the studio, and they actually have these conversations about nationality, about birthright, about heritage and culture. And the issue with them is the finance that they're making. They don't want to give up their contracts. Now you see their football players. Antoine Randall L., he played for Pittsburgh Steelers. And, you know, right across the back of his jersey is his title.
J Electronica, Mariah Carey, Nick Cannon, you know what I mean? They're one of their children's names Morocco. They had a Morocco room in their house and all that type of stuff. If you check Sprague Benz, you know what I mean, a well-known, prominent reggae artist. He had a movie independent movie called Green Card that he came out with, where they were dropping the science in that movie. Of course, you know, you have, you know, Beyonce. She had more in her video. Lupe Fiasco had more in his video. In the Prodigy book, he's talking about he studied the Moors. The Prodigy Hegelian album, talking about etymology and, you know, maritime laws, not the law of the land and all that. So there's people out there that's putting it out, but there's so much of the other stuff that, you know, the truth gets shrouded, you know what I mean, in the lies. But the information is out there as far as like entertainers, movies. You look at Morgan Freeman, always played God, always plays some type of position where you have to wonder, like, you know what I mean? Like, why is he in this movie playing this type of position again? You know what I mean? Every movie he plays some top, you know, level Asiatic that has some superior knowledge than everybody else. Even if you look at like Liar Liar, you know what I mean? Like straight Jim Carrey straight telling you, don't trust lawyers. Same thing that Morris be telling people. You know what I mean? So there's a few out there. Even if you go to, we were just talking about Godfather with the fezzes when they're coming in to the country and all that stuff. You know what I mean? There's so many examples, but people just have to look for them and they'll find it, no doubt.
Taj Civic Bey been, you know, my teacher, and he's been involved for over 30 years. Yourself, Setenvar Bey, Cujo, Il, Vasmavaya, Anae, Ms. Radim, Hakeem Bey, Kemet Yu, Bey. But some of the few who have been shedding light over the years on this in regards to our history, Moorish history, our nationality, our birthright, our European colonization and occupation of our Moorish land. All right, so those are just a few natural persons who have been shedding light over the years.
I would have to say, you know, Nick Cannon for one. I've seen an interview with him when he was on, can't remember the name of the show, and there's a bunch of women around him, and they were questioning his turban, and one of them said, oh, it's Sikh, and he actually said, no, it's Moorish, my Moorish side and the history and so on and so forth. Now, he didn't go very deep, but the fact that he said Moorish, and then the woman that said Sikh brought up the Sikh thing again, it was kind of like she's trying to push a perspective of it's Sikh and not Moorish. So I think he's one. I've seen a video of Lupe Fiasco. Can't remember the name of the song, but it was shot in Chicago, and there was a scene of Moors, and I believe having the flag, the Moorish flag as well in that video, in the beginning of the video. So I would think he's on it, as well as Yassin Bey, obviously. I mean, he proclaimed his nationality and corrected his appellation. So other than that, we get information or examples of certain people that know about it. Noriega mentioned Noble Jew Ali in a rhyme just recently for his Drink Champs podcast. You've heard Ghostface Killer say he's the black Noble Jew Ali. Nas as well mentioned Noble Jew Ali. So the information is out there, but it seems as though the only one that really decided to take that full-on step forward is Yassin Bey.
People that are shedding light on the science right now, from my perspective, to be honest, the majority of the people who are in the spotlight, in the mainstream, in entertainment, politics, I don't think that people in a world of 7 billion reach a height where they're broadcast to a large audience, especially a North American audience, Northwest of Mexham, without having that deeper understanding. It's like, it's not necessary, but I know that it prepares people to go to another step, if that step's available. You know, so it's like being, as they say, being 2 steps ahead, being prepared. And if you don't have the science, then it's easier when you have the science. It's easier when you know this particular body of knowledge that we call Moorish science. It makes things better. It facilitates your development. It facilitates you being, you know, maybe not so well known to becoming very well known. It may be surprising that I might say that, because it's not everybody who says I'm a Moor. But I know certainly, definitely, that there are many people shedding light. I think that Jay-Z is shedding light. I think that Will Smith is shedding light. Yasin Bey is shedding light. Obama shed light. Castro shed some light.
Who are the individuals shedding light on the science that might not be in the light, shedding the light on the science? That's a good one. There's many. Like you mentioned a few who people know already. But you dropped one on me the other day, you know. So, you know, I might as well drop him, because a lot of people probably don't know that he's on it too. A man like David Banner, right? A man like David Banner, who had a run where he was a well-known artist and had hits and whatnot. Now he's probably just behind the scenes doing his thing. Another reason maybe because of that fact, because once you start dealing with certain things and you delve into certain sciences, you're going to start getting shunned, right? Depending on what angle you're dealing with it from. If you're doing it how they want you to do it, then you probably get more light or more shine. But when you're dealing with it from the real perspective, or the way it was meant to be, you're probably going to get blacklisted on a lot of those things. So, you know, another person that I could say who probably went through it, and people probably know, is Wesley. But he's probably doing it on a Wesley Snipes on a different level, and where it's not vocal, but you could just tell by the way things are going in the actions that, you know, he has a level of awareness. And because of that level of awareness and him trying to put that into play, you know, all the roadblocks and the blockages presented there. So there's a lot more, but it's a good question, because right now I wanted to drop a exclusive one, but it can't come to mind right now. But yeah.
Well, for me, the individual shedding light on the science, first and foremost, I have to say Kevin Gates. I was actually on Instagram Live with him, and you know, he's a firm knower, knowing, like he was firm, adamant that his children are raised not to say that they're black. So, you know, Sprague Benz is another person. He's out there doing his thing. Mos Def, of course, J Electronica, Smith & Wesson, shout out General Steel, and I don't know. Oh, Nick Cannon, he's another one. But yeah, there's a few that are shedding light. Nas talks about Noble Drew Ali, you know. So yeah, there's a few, and you could even say Jay-Z with Rock Nation. Just think about the name Rock Nation, you know.
Taj Tariq Bey, Anna E, Raz Bryant, Mizraim, Sheikh Klujo, Asim Bey, Seton Ra, my new son.
Who are the individuals who shed light on science to me? Daria, who many people know now is Prime Minister Daria Bey. I met her taking my son to the babysitters. And I remember her brother crashed her car. And at that time, I was doing my contracting business on a larger scale. And I had about 5 cars. So I had a golden Eldorado, and it's one of my cars. And so I had a job going on, actually on the side of the bridge on Green Street, and I had a job going on in down in Cinnaminster, New Jersey, and one down Clementon. And I used to come at or leave early at work, wherever I might be, to go pick up my son Taj. I had my baby Taj. And that's where I met her. And she would bring her daughter there, Takesha. And for convenience, we started talking. And for convenience, I just let her use that car. And she would pick up my son, Taj. And that took care of the problem of her not having transportation, and I wouldn't have to leave work. And then later on, it seemed something familiar with her. And then I remembered that I used to cut her hair, and because my family's barbers. And we had a barber shop on Haddon Avenue in Camden. And then I remembered she used to have this big, big afro, like perfect shaped afro, and I used to cut her hair. And then I remembered her, and that's how it became more and more friendly. Then I discovered in her family's been in the temples since like the early teens. Like even, and some of her family were conscious even before the Moorish movement started, as you already understand. It's a bloodline. It's a history. But a lot of the Asiatics, would not necessarily talk openly because of the suppression. And so a lot of different Asiatics would hide behind the name Indian in order to protect the culture, knowing that they're not Indians, but that's to get along. But anyway, she was the one who introduced me to literature, Prophet Nationality. And so we have a long history with that. And also we ended up later having a son with her, whom I delivered. And so that's been our bond ever since, But she's the one that delivered Durali's literature to me. But when I went into that literature, when I went in and I came back out, it was like warrior.
How was I introduced to the science, to more science? It was through, I would say, Asir the Duke of Tears. So this was back in 2011 when I was struggling to find constant work in my field. And I thought to myself, there's got to be a spiritual explanation about it. So I started doing some research, and I told myself, I don't want to hear anything from any Europeans. I want to hear my people speaking about it. And it's just no disrespect to Europeans. It's just that whenever you hear about spiritual wisdom or something, it's always Europeans talking about it. So I just started doing some research, and I think one of the first videos I came across on YouTube was from this beautiful Asiatic sister. I can't remember what her name was. And she was just talking more about astrology and stuff. I'm like, okay, I was always interested in astrology. Listened a little bit, and then I clicked further. And I came up on Alim Bey, and I watched a couple of his videos in a setting where it's a dark setting, and he's writing something on a whiteboard. Watched a couple of his videos, and I came across Hakim Bey, the original. And I watched some of his Moorish paradigm videos, and I was hearing this Moorish stuff, and I didn't know what it was. And then I came across Asir the Duke of Tears, and he said, I think it was a video or a podcast. No, I think it was a video. And he said something to the effect of, if the Creator created man in the likeness of himself, and we were the first people on the planet, what does that say about us? And then the second thing he said, if the sun is the giver of life on the planet, and the sun gives us energy, what does that say about us? And so those two things just got me thinking, okay, this guy, something super simple and super deep. And then I started listening more and more to his videos and podcasts, and he was talking about this Moorish thing. Didn't know what it was, so I actually sent him an email, because he always left his email at the end of videos and podcasts. And he sent me his number. He said to give him a call. And I called him, and he said, "Oh, you're in Germany. You're in Nuremberg." He said the Moorish influence there is huge. So just take a walk around the city and see what you find. And I had already been domiciling in Nuremberg for 2011, say 7 years. 2003, 11, yeah, 7 years, 8 years. And I've walked past certain monuments every single day, and I didn't know what it was. And there was a Moorish pharmacy there. There's coat of arms with Moorish heads on it all over the city. There's different beers with Moorish insignia on it and stuff like that. So that's what got me into the science. And then I started just taking more and more classes from him, because his knowledge and wisdom seemed pretty extensive, and it was very extensive. I would say the science, I can't really say the science opened up my eyes to things I didn't see before. It's more so it ignited what was already inside of me. Because when I started learning, especially about the fact that we were already in the Americas long before the so-called slave trade, that made sense to me. Because growing up, you always heard the story that we came across the Atlantic in the slave trade, and that for some reason just never sat right with me. I didn't know why, but it just didn't sit right. And then when I found out that we were already here, that just made a whole bunch more sense to me. And so learning about the science, I would say, just validated all these different feelings that I had when I was younger. Prime example would be, like I said, Christianity didn't make sense to me. But then when I heard about Islam, it made more sense to me in the aspect of Islam says that Muhammad, peace be upon him, was a prophet. Jesus, peace be upon him, was a prophet. And all these I would say special, if you want to say, religious people were prophets. Whereas Christianity said Jesus was the Son of God and the only Son of God. So that to me made more sense to me, that all of them are prophets. However, the only example of Islam that I had was the Nation of Islam. And to me, growing up, they were just too extreme, talking about the quote-unquote white man is the devil and stuff. I was just never really into that.